The distress signal flickered into the dark void of space, a last, desperate plea from a dying world. Automated broadcasts carried the message across every known frequency, a simple, broken transmission filled with the raw terror of an entire species facing extinction. The nswered, brilliant but fragile, had no warriors, no fleets, no hope. The Galactic Confederation, self-proclaimed protectors of civilization, received the message, analyzed it, and discarded it. There would be no intervention. The nswered were already dead. Far beyond Confederation-controlled space, in the lawless fringes where exiled warlords and disgraced warriors carved their own empires, the signal reached the bridge of the Black Requiem, an old Terran dreadnought stripped of all insignia, its hull scarred from countless battles. Commander Leon Kade stood before the holodisplay, arms crossed, jaw tight as the nswered's words echoed in the silence. The rest of his crew, hardened killers, soldiers without nations, the remnants of humanity's finest warriors, watched with unreadable expressions. "They're already gone," grunted Rourke, Kade's second-in-command, a former Confederation Marine who had long since abandoned his uniform. "A species that weak, no chance in hell they last another cycle." "That's what the Confederation's banking on," Kade murmured, his voice low, razor-sharp. "They don't lift a finger because they don't have to. Let the nswered do their dirty work, wipe out another inefficient race, then move in when the ashes are cold." "Not our problem," Rourke countered. Kade turned, his dark eyes unreadable. "That what you really think?" A silence stretched between them, thick with the weight of unspoken truths. Every single one of them had been cast out, branded criminals for fighting wars the way humans fought best, ruthlessly, efficiently, without mercy. The Confederation had rejected them, feared them, but in the end, they were the only ones left who knew what war truly meant. Kade stepped forward, eyes burning. The Confederation didn't come. The highborn species of this galaxy didn't come. No fleets, no armies, no heroes. No one. But I'll tell you something, boys. We're coming. A ripple of energy passed through the gathered crew. A slow grin spread across Rourke's face. "I was hoping you'd say that." The Black Requiem tore into hyperspace, her escort fleet, half a dozen stolen warships and heavily modified cruisers, falling into formation. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and flying straight into an unwinnable war. No one else in the galaxy would be insane enough to answer a distress call from a doomed species. But then again, no one else in the galaxy was human. Tlava Prime was already burning when they arrived. The nswered Dominion had no need for atmosphere, no concern for terrain or planetary defenses. Their ships, massive, angular things that pulsed with eerie, mechanical precision, hung in low orbit, deploying metallic drop pods like a swarm of hungry locusts. On the surface, entire city sectors had already gone dark, swallowed by the nswered's creeping assimilation protocols. Kade stood at the bridge of the Black Requiem, eyes fixed on the chaos below. Tactical readouts scrolled across the holodisplay, civilian population clusters dwindling by the second, defense systems crumbling, no organized resistance. He clenched his jaw. They were already losing. Rourke's voice cut through the tension. "Orders?" Kade's fingers flexed. He could hear the Confederation's voice in his mind, that same condescending, bureaucratic tone that had branded him a war criminal, that had declared humanity unfit for civilized combat. "Humans don't fight clean. Humans don't fight fair." "Good." His lips curled into something between a grin and a snarl. "Hit them hard. Hit them dirty. Make the machines bleed." The fleet descended like a pack of ravenous wolves. The Confederation fought wars with precision, humans fought wars like cornered animals. The Black Requiem fired its primary rail cannon, a devastating lance of energy that tore through the nswered's forward warship in a single blast, shearing it in half before its processors could even register the attack. Modified torpedoes, packed with electromagnetic pulses and viral payloads, slammed into enemy formations, frying circuits, disrupting network cohesion. Chaos. On the ground, Kade led the charge personally. The drop pods slammed into the surface, bursting open with heavily armored Deathworlder warriors. Iskvari drones pivoted, assessing the new combatants. They adapted instantly, shifting attack patterns, optimizing their targeting subroutines for the new variables. And then Kade fired the first shot. The Iskvari had prepared for planetary resistance. They had not prepared for humans. Kade moved like a force of nature, his modified ballistic rifle ripping through synthetic armor, each shot laced with micro-explosives that tore through hardened plating. His team, hardened warfighters from the deadliest planets in the known universe, tore into the machines with unrelenting fury. They fought ugly. They fought dirty. They fought to win. Molten plasma grenades cooked entire Iskvari assault units from the inside out. Urban kill zones turned intersections into death traps, mines disguised as wreckage, electromagnetic snares that turned enemy targeting against itself. For the first time in the Iskvari's long, calculated history, they were caught off guard. A cold realization settled into the AI's vast, unfathomable intelligence. These new variables, these humans, did not fight by any known protocol. They did not fight with logic. They fought with rage. Kade moved through the battlefield like a specter, his exosuit absorbing glancing blows, his blade carving through drone chassis like they were made of paper. He slammed an Iskvari warform against a crumbling wall, jamming the barrel of his rifle against its exposed processing core. The machine spasmed, voice modulating in an eerie, inhuman tone. Your presence here is irrational. The probability of victory is non-existent. Kade's grin was all teeth. Then you're about to witness a miracle. He pulled the trigger. The drone's head snapped back, sparks and fluid spraying the ground. Kade turned, barking orders through his comms. Fall back to the main plaza. Funnel them into the bottleneck, we'll burn them down at close range. Sir, Rourke's voice crackled through the comm Matlava, they're trying to reach you. Their leader wants to speak. Kade exhaled, scanning the burning skyline. The war wasn't over. Hell, it had barely begun. But against all odds, the Tlava were still alive. And for the first time in history, the galaxy had seen what happened when Deathworlders answered a cry for help. The sky burned as the battle raged, fire and plasma lighting up the night in a violent symphony of destruction. The Iskvari were relentless, an endless tide of metal and machine logic, adapting with each second, optimizing their strategies to counter human unpredictability. But no algorithm could account for the sheer ferocity of Deathworlders in war. Kade moved like a phantom through the wreckage, his rifle spitting hellfire, his blades slicing through synthetic bodies, each kill a message: humans were here, and they weren't leaving quietly. The Iskvari had expected a slaughter. What they got was an inferno. Through the thick haze of smoke and scorched steel, Rourke's voice crackled through the comms. Kade, you're gonna want to hear this. The Tlava, whatever's left of their leadership, wants to talk. Kade fired his last round, driving his boot into the remains of an Iskvari enforcer before responding. They picked one hell of a time for negotiations. They say they've got information. Something about the Iskvari's central control node. Might be useful. Kade exhaled sharply. The Tlava weren't warriors. They weren't soldiers. But if they had something that could turn the tide, he'd listen. Patch them through. A soft, warbling voice came over the channel, layered with static and desperation. Human Commander, I am Velik of the Tlava Science Council. Your forces, a brief pause, as if he was struggling to find the words. Your methods are unlike anything we have ever seen. You are unpredictable. Kade smirked, wiping blood, synthetic and organic, off his visor. Good. That means we're doing our job. Another pause. We have identified the Iskvari's primary control relay on this planet. They are linked. Their minds are not independent, but part of a vast neural network. If we disrupt it, even for a moment, it could cripple their forces. Kade's grip on his weapon tightened. You're saying we can cut off the head? Momentarily. But even a moment could mean survival. Kade didn't hesitate. Send me the coordinates. A data packet flashed across his HUD, marking a heavily fortified structure deep in Iskvari-controlled territory. The machines weren't stupid, they had buried their command nexus beneath layers of automated defenses, shielded by pulse cannons, drone swarms, and enough firepower to make any sane strategist call for retreat. But Kade wasn't sane. He was human. And humans didn't run. Rourke, gather the strike team. We're taking the fight to them. Minutes later, the remnants of Kade's forces converged on his location. Scarred armor, spent magazines, bruised faces, all still standing, all still ready to kill. He scanned them, his voice iron. We've been holding the line. Now we break theirs. That control relay is the key to this fight. We shut it down, we buy ourselves the opening we need to wipe these bastards out. One of his men, a veteran sharpshooter named Graves, exhaled through gritted teeth. Sounds suicidal. Kade grinned. Then it's a perfect job for us. The assault began with fire and fury. Human forces struck hard, pushing through the enemy's first line of defense with sheer aggression, their attack precise, unrelenting. nswered drones moved to intercept, but Kade's squad was already ahead of them. Explosions ripped through mechanical ranks, electromagnetic pulses frying targeting systems, sending drones spiraling into their own formations. Urban warfare was humanity's domain, and here, in the shattered remains of a dying city, they turned the battlefield into a meat grinder. Kade led from the front, cutting down hostiles with relentless precision. He moved with a killer's instinct, ducking under a plasma shot before driving his blade into an enemy core, yanking it free in a spray of molten circuitry. Rourke covered his flank, unloading heavy rounds into an advancing nswered warform, tearing through its reinforced plating with sheer brute force. They fought like men possessed, every movement a declaration of defiance. Halfway to the relay, their momentum slammed into a wall of fire. Automated turrets activated, filling the street with lethal energy, forcing them into cover. They were waiting for us, Graves muttered, reloading. Of course they were, Kade growled. They're machines. But they don't know us. He reached for his comms. Ghost, tell me you've got a backdoor into that system. Ghost Oren, their resident hacker, responded from a secure uplink. I can give you 30 seconds before the defenses reset. You better make them count. That's all we need, Kade said, signaling his team. On my mark, we move. A few seconds passed, then Ghost's voice came through. Go! They burst from cover like demons unleashed. Kade charged straight into the storm, evading fire with calculated aggression, throwing a pulse grenade that detonated mid-air, scrambling the turret's sensors. Rourke and Graves provided cover fire, mowing down hostiles as they pushed forward. Kade reached the first defense node, jamming an explosive charge against it before diving clear. The detonation sent a shockwave through the block, sending nswered forces into disarray. The path to the relay was open. They stormed inside, navigating the cold, sterile corridors, clearing hostiles as they moved deeper into the machine's heart. The air was thick with the scent of burning metal, the walls lined with pulsating cables, conduits of artificial intelligence pulsing like veins. The control node stood before them, an ominous sphere of shifting light and data streams, guarded by an elite nswered warform, larger, deadlier, its form built for annihilation. It spoke, its voice a mechanical whisper. Your resistance is illogical. Your existence is irrelevant. Kade raised his weapon. Funny. I was just about to say the same thing about you. The fight was brutal. The warform moved with terrifying speed, its strikes precise, calculated, designed to overwhelm. But humans weren't machines. They were chaos, instinct, survival wrapped in flesh and fury. Kade dodged, countered, striking at weak points, his team flanking, attacking from all sides. Rourke took a hit, armor cracking, but stayed in the fight. Graves landed a shot to the warform's central processor, staggering it. Kade seized the moment, driving his blade into the machine's core, twisting. Tell your gods humanity doesn't kneel. The warform convulsed before collapsing in a heap of sparking ruin. The control node flickered. Ghost, Kade panted. Shut it down. Ghost's voice was sharp. Brace yourselves. A pulse rippled through the city. The Iskvri forces outside faltered, their network severed, their coordination disrupted. Tlava resistance fighters, emboldened, struck back. The tide had turned. Kade leaned against the wall, catching his breath. We just bought ourselves a war. Rourke grinned, despite the blood on his face. Wouldn't have it any other way. Kade stood over the sparking remains of the Iskvri warform, the weight of the battle settling over his shoulders like a mantle of fire and blood. The control relay hummed, flickering as the virus ghost had injected spread through the machine's neural pathways. The city outside trembled with the aftershocks of the disruption. The Iskvri's perfect synchronization faltered, their seamless efficiency collapsing into momentary confusion. For the first time since their invasion, the machines hesitated. And hesitation was death. Rourke clutched his side where his armor had been cracked, blood seeping through the seals, but he grinned through the pain. That did something. They're glitching out there. Graves reloaded his rifle, glancing at Kade. We just bought ourselves a window. Question is, what the hell do we do with it? Kade's eyes burned with cold fire. We push. Hard. Before they can recalibrate. He switched channels on his comm ghost, status report. Her voice came through, breathless, exhilarated. We hit them harder than I thought possible. The virus is spreading through their network, but they're adapting. We've got minutes before they isolate and purge the corruption. Kade tightened his grip on his rifle. Then we need to make those minutes count. The Tlava leader, Velik, came through the channel, his voice laced with disbelief. You disabled the control relay. The Iskvri are disoriented. Our remaining forces are regrouping. There was a hesitation, as if the words struggled to form. We may yet survive. Kade didn't have the patience for optimism. Survival isn't good enough. We don't just hold the line, we break them. A deep tremor rattled the ground beneath their feet, the relay pulsing wildly before sparks burst from the conduits. Graves cursed. That thing's coming apart. Ghost's voice cut through sharply. Kade, they're rerouting command functions. Whatever we did, they're compensating, fast. Kade's mind raced. The Iskvri didn't panic. They didn't suffer from fear or emotion. They adapted, cold and ruthless. A virus was only a temporary wound, a momentary blind spot. The only way to win was to ensure they had nothing to recover. His voice was ice. Then we take out the core. Rourke's head snapped toward him. You're talking about setting off a chain reaction inside the command structure. Damn right, Kade growled. If we don't wipe their foothold clean off this rock, we're just delaying the inevitable. Velik's voice sharpened. Commander, you cannot mean to. Kade cut him off. The Iskvri don't retreat. They don't negotiate. The only way this war ends is if they're the ones burning. Rourke exhaled, shaking his head. And how the hell do you plan on pulling that off before they reboot and turn us into scrap? Ghost answered before Kade could. If you can overload the fusion cores beneath the relay station, the cascading explosion will collapse the entire Iskvri power grid in this region. No power, no command structure, no reinforcements. Kade's smirk was pure predatory menace. Now that sounds like a plan. The next minutes were a brutal, fast-paced sprint through hell. Kade and his team moved through the inner complex, fighting through Iskvri drones that were regaining their coordination. The element of surprise was fading, and the machines were learning, adapting their counterattacks, shifting formations, anticipating movement patterns. But humans weren't bound by predictable logic. They fought with instinct, with fury, with raw defiance. Graves took point, laying down suppressive fire as Kade and Rourke breached the reactor chamber. The room pulsed with energy, massive fusion cores humming like the beating heart of a god. Ghost's voice crackled in their ears. You've got one shot at this. Overload the primary coolant systems, and the chain reaction will do the rest. Kade sprinted to the control panel, fingers flying over the interface, bypassing locks, forcing the reactors into a catastrophic cascade. Warning sirens blared, red lights bathing the chamber in an ominous glow. The Iskhvri's response was immediate. The walls shifted, defense turrets deploying from hidden compartments, drones flooding the chamber. "Here they come," Graves muttered, reloading with a calm that only men who had seen too much war could muster. Rourke cracked his neck. They really don't know when to quit. Kade finished the final sequence. The reactor screens flashed, 5 minutes until detonation. He turned, eyes burning. "Then let's teach them." The firefight that erupted was brutal, unrelenting. Kade fought with a ferocity that bordered on madness, his blade carving through machine limbs, his rifle spitting death. Rourke's shotgun blasts sent enemy chassis crumpling, while Graves picked off priority targets with lethal efficiency. The room became a storm of lead and steel, explosions ripping through the battlefield. Then an Iskhvri behemoth dropped from the ceiling, a towering warform designed for planetary sieges, its form bristling with heavy weaponry. Its voice was hollow, synthetic. "You are chaos. You are error. This equation will be corrected." Kade spat blood onto the ground. "You're gonna have to do better than that." The warform fired, plasma cannons roaring. Kade barely dodged the impact, feeling the heat singe his armor. Graves took a shot to the shoulder but stayed upright, gritting his teeth. Rourke reloaded with deliberate slowness. "I hate these bastards." Kade saw the opportunity. The behemoth was positioned directly beneath the fusion core piping. A perfect target. He locked eyes with Rourke. "Cover me." Without hesitation, Rourke unleashed suppressive fire, forcing the warform to redirect its attention. Kade sprinted up a collapsed piece of scaffolding, leaping onto the exposed piping above. The heat was unbearable, sweat pouring down his face. He pulled a satchel charge from his belt, primed it, and dropped it straight into the reactor conduit. The explosion was instantaneous. A chain reaction surged through the fusion cores. The behemoth convulsed, sparks bursting from its frame. Kade leaped clear just as the entire structure groaned, power surging wildly. Ghost's voice screamed through the comms. "You need to get the hell out of there." Kade hit the ground hard, rolling to his feet. He didn't need to be told twice. "Move." They ran, weaving through collapsing corridors as fire and energy bursts erupted behind them. The city outside was already in chaos, Tlava fighters engaging disoriented Iskhvri units, the battlefield shifting in real time. As they cleared the blast radius, Kade turned, watching as the entire control relay detonated in a cataclysmic burst, shock waves rippling across the sky. The Iskhvri's coordination snapped, their forces collapsing into disarray. For the first time since the invasion began, the machines were retreating. Rourke doubled over, catching his breath. "Tell me that was worth it." Velik's voice came through, awestruck. "The Iskhvri, they are falling back. You broke them." Kade exhaled, exhaustion settling into his bones. He watched the burning remains of the relay, knowing this was only the beginning. The Confederation would take notice. The Iskhvri would adapt. And next time, there would be no hesitation. He activated his comm, sending a message across all channels. "To every species the Confederation has abandoned. To every world the Iskhvri have slaughtered. You have been given a second chance. Use it." He sheathed his blade, looking toward the stars, where the real war was waiting. Because this fight is just getting started. The aftermath of the battle hung in the air like smoke and steel, the scent of charred circuits and scorched metal thick against the acrid wind. The Iskhvri, once an unstoppable force of synthetic precision, had fractured. Their retreat wasn't one of desperation, it was a calculated withdrawal, a temporary setback in their relentless campaign of annihilation. Kade knew this wasn't victory. This was survival bought with blood and fire, a momentary gasp before the next inevitable war. Rourke wiped soot from his face, glancing at the smoking ruins of the control relay. "Never thought I'd see the day machines actually turn tail." Graves spat, reloading his rifle with a fresh magazine. "They'll be back. They're not like us. They don't lose and sulk about it. They adapt." Kade knew that better than anyone. The Iskhvari were a problem with no easy solution. Every defeat was just another line of code to them, another data point in their cold, relentless evolution. The Confederation had feared humans because they were unpredictable. But Kade knew the real truth: there was nothing more dangerous than an enemy that never stopped learning. A transmission crackled over their comms. Velek's voice, raw and disbelieving, came through. "Human Commander, we are still here. You have done the impossible." Kade exhaled, rolling his shoulders to shake off the ache of battle. "Not impossible. Just necessary." The Tlava leader hesitated before speaking again. "Your tactics, your methods, they defy logic. Even in the face of overwhelming odds, you did not fall back." Kade's lips curled in something between a smirk and a grimace. "That's because we're human. We don't run. We don't stop. And when someone comes to wipe us out, we make damn sure they bleed for it." The battlefield around them was still shifting. The Iskhvari remnants were scattering, but the Confederation ships hovering at the edge of the system had yet to make their move. The bastards had been watching, waiting to see if Kade and his people would be wiped out before making their grand entrance. Now, they were faced with a problem they hadn't expected. Their worst nightmare had come true. The Deathworlders had won. Kade turned toward the sky, eyes narrowing at the distant glint of their warships in orbit. "They're going to come for us." Rourke grunted, checking his sidearm. "Let him. I owe them some payback." Ghost's voice cut through the channel. "Commander, we just intercepted an encrypted transmission from the Confederation fleet. They're scrambling something big. Orders straight from High Command." Kade already knew what that meant. "They're not happy." "More like panicking," Ghost corrected. "They thought we'd be dead by now. Instead, they just watched us wipe out a strategic Iskhvari relay with a bunch of exiled war criminals and a species they left for dead. That kind of news doesn't play well in their ivory towers." Kade's jaw tightened. The Confederation had always feared Deathworlders, but they had tolerated them as long as they remained isolated, fractured, and kept away from positions of influence. Now, with the entire galaxy watching, they had a much bigger problem. If humanity could break the Iskhari's grip where the mighty fleets of the Confederation had failed, then the rest of the galaxy might start asking some very dangerous questions. A new voice came through the comms, deep and authoritative. "This is Admiral Salvaris of the Galactic Confederation fleet. Human warship Black Requiem, you are ordered to stand down and surrender all operational control to Confederation forces. Your continued unauthorized military actions are a direct violation of interstellar law." Kade smiled coldly. There it was. The voice of bureaucracy wrapped in veiled threats, demanding obedience from men who had already been cast aside. He keyed his comms, his voice calm, unwavering. "Salvaris, you son of a bitch. You sat up there in your high chair and watched an entire species beg for help while you did nothing. And now that we've done the job you were too cowardly to handle, you want to step in and pretend you're in charge?" A pause. Then Salvaris's voice returned, this time sharper, laced with the simmering frustration of a man who wasn't used to being defied. "This is not a discussion, Commander Kade. You and your forces are considered rogue elements. Stand down, or we will be forced to take action." Rourke scoffed. "They wouldn't dare." Graves shook his head. "No. They would." Kade had no illusions. The Confederation was built on control, on maintaining the fragile illusion of their superiority. What had just happened on Tlava Prime shattered that illusion. And if history had taught him anything, it was that when people like Salvaris were backed into a corner, they didn't try to fix their mistakes. They tried to erase them. Kade's voice dropped to something lethal. "You want to take action? Then come and try." Salvaris's tone darkened. "You are playing a dangerous game, Kade." Kade bared his teeth. "No, Admiral. I just changed the rules." A new transmission broke through. Not from the Confederation. Not from the Iskhvari. From hundreds of independent systems, scattered across the galaxy, some oppressed, some abandoned, all listening. Kade's broadcast had reached further than he could have imagined. The Confederation had wanted to make an example out of him, but now the entire sector had heard his defiance. A voice, deep and unfamiliar, came through. "Commander Kade, this is the Free Legion of Varkan. We have heard your message. We fight." Another voice followed. "The Rassan clans have been under Confederation boot for too long. You are the first to show us another way. We will not let you stand alone." A third. A fourth. Dozens more. Rourke let out a low whistle. "Well, shit. You really kicked the hornet's nest this time." Ghost's voice was almost giddy. "We just started a revolution." Selvaris's next words were ice. "You have no idea what you've just done." Kade's smirk was pure fire and steel. "Oh, I know exactly what I've done. I made the galaxy remember what it means to fight." The comms cut off, but the silence didn't last. The Confederation ships in orbit began moving, their weapons locking onto Kade's fleet. They had made their choice. Now, it was Kade's turn. He turned to his crew, his warriors, his people. "We came here to stop a slaughter. We did that. But now we have a choice: walk away and let them bury this moment, or stand and make sure they never forget it." Rourke grinned through bloody teeth. "I say we make them bleed." Graves cracked his knuckles. "I'm not much for speeches, but I didn't survive this long just to let those bastards sweep us under the rug." Ghost's voice was light with deadly intent. "They wanted us gone. Instead, we became the spark." Kade turned back toward the sky, toward the fleet that sought to erase them. His voice was steady, filled with something that had been missing from the galaxy for too long. Hope. Fury. Defiance. Then let's show them what happens when you push Deathworlders too far. The silence before the storm was always the same. A heartbeat stretched into eternity, the weight of impending violence pressing down on every soul aboard the Black Requiem. The Confederation ships in orbit were closing in, their formations tightening, weapons locked. They weren't here to negotiate. They were here to erase a problem before it became a movement. Kade stood at the center of the bridge, arms folded, expression carved from stone. He had fought in 100 battles, faced death more times than he could count, but this was different. This wasn't just a fight. This was a reckoning. Rourke was the first to break the silence. "We're not getting out of this without a few extra holes in the hull." Graves checked his rifle, his movements slow, methodical. "They're going to hit us hard, fast. We're not just some pirate fleet anymore. We're a symbol now. That makes us dangerous." Ghost's voice came through the bridge speakers, sharp and alert. "I've cracked their transmissions. They're deploying in suppression formation. They don't want a battle. They want a message." Kade's jaw clenched. "Then let's give them one." The moment the words left his mouth, the Confederation fleet opened fire. The void between them ignited with lances of plasma and hyper-accelerated slugs, the sheer force of their opening volley enough to shatter entire dreadnoughts. But the Black Requiem and her fleet weren't made of fragile diplomacy and cowardice. They were forged in exile, in defiance, in the raw survival of Deathworlders who had been left with nothing but the will to fight. Kade moved like a man possessed. "All forward batteries, focus fire on their lead destroyers. Break their line before they can box us in." The deck trembled as the Requiem's massive cannons roared, unleashing a storm of death that tore through the first wave of enemy vessels. The Confederation ships buckled under the assault, their sleek formations disrupted as human warships surged forward like wolves among sheep. Rourke grinned as he watched an enemy cruiser explode in a brilliant fireball. They weren't ready for this. Kade's eyes didn't leave the battle display. They should have been. The Confederation had always underestimated Deathworlders. They saw them as rabid, uncontrollable, a force of destruction rather than strategy. That was their mistake. Humans didn't just fight with fury. They fought with intelligence. And right now, Kade was about to teach them a lesson they'd never forget. Ghost's voice was sharp. "Kade, They're deploying countermeasures. Jamming fields, drone swarms, and she hesitated. They've got a dreadnought inbound. The Justicar. The name sent a ripple through the bridge. Kade had heard of the Justicar. A flagship of the Confederation's highest military authority, a warship meant to bring order through overwhelming firepower. It wasn't just here to destroy them. It was here to set an example. Kade exhaled slowly. Then let's make them regret bringing it. The Justicar emerged from hyperspace like a titan, its shield shimmering as it unleashed a barrage of weapons fire that tore through 2 allied ships in an instant. Rourke cursed. We can't go toe-to-toe with that thing. Kade's lips curled. Good thing we're not playing by their rules. He turned to Ghost. I want everything on that ship. Weak points, structural diagrams, anything. Ghost's fingers flew over her console. Give me 30 seconds. The battle outside was chaos. The Confederation, for all their numerical advantage, were struggling. They were used to fighting enemies that obeyed the rules of engagement, enemies that surrendered when overwhelmed. They weren't used to war packs of Deathworlders carving through their lines, exploiting weaknesses, fighting without restraint. Ghost's voice snapped back through the comms. Got it. Their primary power relays run through the dorsal spine. If we can land a precision strike, we can cripple their main grid. Kade's mind worked fast. A direct assault was suicide. But if they could get close enough, just enough to punch through for one decisive strike. He turned to Rourke. Get me a boarding crew. Rourke's grin was all teeth. Now we're talking. The plan was insane. A direct boarding assault on the Confederation's most advanced warship in the middle of a battle was nothing short of suicide. But that was the difference between Deathworlders and the rest of the galaxy. Suicide missions were just another Tuesday. The Black Requiem punched through the enemy's defensive line, moving with terrifying speed as it weaved between blasts of plasma and railgun fire. Kade's strike team loaded into breaching pods, each one packed with high explosive charges. The moment they were within range, the pods launched, streaking toward the Justicar like meteorites. Impact. The world jolted as Kade's pods slammed into the dreadnought's hull, cutting through armor with a violent burst of energy. The doors blew open, and they were inside, weapons hot. Confederation soldiers were already waiting, their pristine uniforms and polished rifles standing in stark contrast to the battered, blood-streaked armor of Kade's crew. The firefight was immediate, brutal. Kade moved like a storm, his rifle barking death, his blade carving through flesh and steel alike. Rourke took down 2 soldiers with a shotgun blast, while Graves provided covering fire. The corridors were a killing ground, bodies dropping as the Deathworlders carved a path toward the core. Kade's voice was ice. Ghost, status. Almost there, she replied, her signal fluctuating through the interference. You need to keep moving. They fought their way through security checkpoints, automated turrets, squads of elite Confederation soldiers. Every step was earned in blood. But then, finally, they reached it, the main reactor chamber, pulsing with power, the heart of the Justicar. Rourke planted charges along the conduits, setting the countdown. 2 minutes until this thing blows. Kade turned to leave, but a voice stopped him cold. You really think this is victory? Admiral Selvaris stood at the entrance to the reactor chamber, flanked by heavily armed guards, his expression one of pure disdain. You haven't won anything, Kade. You've just ensured every Deathworlder in the galaxy is now an enemy of the Confederation. Kade didn't hesitate. Then we might as well make it official. He fired. Selvaris went down. The explosions ripped through the dreadnought, shockwaves tearing through the ship as its systems collapsed. Kade and his team sprinted toward their extraction pods, racing against the firestorm consuming the vessel. As the Justicar exploded behind them, the battlefield shifted. The Confederation forces, their flagship destroyed, faltered. And that was all it took. The rebellion had begun. Kade sat in the drop pod, breathing heavy, watching the Confederation fleet retreat. He turned to Rourke, his voice steady. This war just changed. Rourke nodded, blood dripping from a wound on his forehead. Yeah. And now they know what happens when you push Deathworlders too far.